It's that time of year again. The one where we're all expected to feel aggressively romantic, whether we have a partner or not, and to endure the annual invasion of red foil hearts, overpriced roses, and sickly sweet cards on the shop shelves. I mean, honestly, does anyone over the age of 16 actually get Valentine's cards? Or are we just being cynical, sneering into our matcha lattes while the rest of you are off planning grand romantic gestures? Nah, I'm only joking. Mainly. But no, we don't actually mind a bit of love at the Red Eye, and it wouldn't be right to let Valentine's week pass without a story that at least tries to fit the theme. So, donated by an ex-cabin crew member who genuinely did meet her soulmate at work, this is a tale of two people who found love when their destinations quite literally aligned. It's a story of rosters and stars lining up, of destiny, of love at first sight, of two people becoming one in a far-flung corner of the world. Oh, God, I'm sorry, I just can't do that anymore. It appears our writer has briefly caught some kind of romantic fever, so I'm just going to get on with the story and hope that it improves a bit from here. Doors to armed and cross-check.
Come fly the red eye.
Welcome aboard the Red Eye. Antigua, 1998. The two girls couldn't believe their luck. 5 nights in the Caribbean, great allowances, beautiful hotel, and they had just found out there was a Royal Navy ship in dock on its way back from the Falkland Islands. What more could two single girls in their 20s ask for? It's actually like the gods were looking out for us, said Tracy. Last month would have been good, I'm sure, but this month... Oh, well, let's just see what happens, eh? Lou raised her glass of cocktail. Cheers to that, she said, taking a long, satisfied sip. They were meant to have been on the exact same trip the month before, but when it had been cancelled due to a storm, the lovely rostering team had assigned the trip to the exact same crew who had all requested it. What had been a source of disappointment then was quickly becoming a cause for celebration now. I think we should go to Shirley Heights tomorrow night, Sarah piped up from 2 lounges down. It was Saturday, their first full day off, and on Sundays, the place on the hill known as Shirley Heights was the place to be at sunset. It would be alive with music, barbecues roasting and rum punches flowing. My friend is on the ship and he said most of them are heading there. Lou sat bolt upright. We're in, she said without hesitation. Damn right, Tracy agreed, grinning at Sarah. And you can introduce us to all the handsome ones. Sarah laughed. I only know one of them, but I don't think a bunch of tanned air hostesses will need much help with introductions. The thing was, though, Lou wasn't actually single. She reminded herself as she got ready that next afternoon. But there were extenuating circumstances, and they went some way towards justifying her excitement at meeting some handsome sailors that evening. 1, she was young. Just 25, and she'd been with Clive since she was at school. 2, she didn't love him how she should. I mean, yeah, she loved him, but it was definitely like you love a brother, and along with that, she loved everyone who came along with him. His parents, his sister, they were all her family too now. And 3, his gran was sick. And she couldn't leave him when he and his family were literally counting down their last months, possibly weeks, with the lovely old lady who held them all together. No, she was doing the right thing, staying in the house they rented together and supporting him through this tough time. And she hadn't done anything wrong, nor did she intend to. But a flirt and a bit of attention might be just the tonic she needed to carry her through her time between flights, when she'd found herself having to be far more grown up and far less fun than she was quite ready for. There was a knock at the door, and Lou opened it to find Tracy there, holding a bottle of fizz. "Free drinks," she announced as she breezed past her. popping the cork and pouring 2 glasses. Always. Nearly ready. Lou ran her brush through her hair and looked at herself in the mirror. Her skin was tanned from the run of Caribbean flights she'd done recently. Her hair blonder than usual. Yeah, she looked good. And she was curious to see where that got her. They met the rest of the crew in the lobby, already giggly and nicely warmed up. The minibus they had booked earlier for the journey wound its way through narrow streets and up the mountain. When the driver slid the door open at Shirley Heights, the sound of a steel band drifted in, along with the unmistakable smell of jerk chicken, charcoal and spice carried on the warm sea breeze. They joined the loose queue of tourists in linen and sandals, locals greeting each other loudly as they passed, all shuffling towards the small booth beneath the canopy to pay the entrance fee and have paper wristbands fastened around their arms. Just inside the entrance, Lou, Tracy and the rest of the crew stopped and stood in uncharacteristic silence for a moment as they took in the view that opened up in front of them, as if a curtain had just been pulled. It was breathtaking. In front of them, the sun was setting. What was left of it smeared across the horizon in streaks of bright orange and pink. Far down below, English Harbour curved around the land. Rows of yachts sitting on the impossibly still water, their mast lights blinking softly, reflecting in the bay. Further along, they could just make out Nelson's dockyard in the fading light, the old stone buildings glowing in the sunset. Lou pulled her camera out of her handbag and began snapping pictures. This was one view she didn't want to forget. "Rum punch?" Tracy's voice interrupted her photography, and Lou turned around, smiling. "Oh, yes, please." She slipped the camera away and followed her to the bar, and it was there, as they drank those first rum punches, that the girls saw them. The 2 young sailors that were watching them right back. The younger one looks a bit like Tom Cruise, don't you think? Lou mused. "A little," Tracy allowed, "but I think Brown Shirt is more handsome." And so it went. Now officially christened Tom and Brown Shirt, the 2 men became the subject of animated discussion. And judging by the way their glances kept being returned, the feeling appeared to be mutual. "Who are you 2 checking out?" Sarah's voice appeared behind them. She had a bottle of beer in her hand and a knowing grin on her face. "Was it that obvious?" Lou laughed. Sarah grinned wider. "Well, there's nothing wrong with obvious. Come on, I'll introduce you." Lou felt heat creep into her cheeks as they followed her. She'd been in a relationship her entire adult life, and despite the bravado she managed with her friends, the reality of it all was something else entirely. I mean, what was she meant to say? What if he wasn't interested? She needn't have worried, though, because Sarah hadn't meant Tom or Brown Shirt at all. Instead, she marched them straight past the pair. Tom caught Lou's eye and laughed, and Lou, utterly thrown, gave him an awkward little smile in return. "Girls, these gentlemen are officers on the ship," Sarah announced brightly. "Gary, meet Louise and Tracy, and introduce us to the rest of your friends, please." Gary obliged happily, and soon Tom and Brown Shirt were eclipsed by this new group of sailors, easy conversation flowing as introductions were made. Except Lou didn't forget Tom. Every once in a while she would look over her shoulder and look for him, and more often than not, he would be looking straight back at her. As much as she had been nervous to speak to him, the more time that passed, the more she wanted to. She saw some of the crew dancing by the band, and with Sarah and Tracy deep in their own conversations, she saw her opportunity to break free, traversing the mountaintop on the way to the dance floor with a very small detour past Tom. "Why exactly did you laugh at me?" The words left Lou's mouth before she could stop them. It was the lamest icebreaker / conversation starter she could have come up with, but it was out now. she thought, berating herself as she backed away. Tom didn't seem to think the same, though. He just shrugged and grinned at her. "Can I get you a drink?" he asked. And that was that. Tom, whose real name turned out to be Dan, and Lou spent the rest of the night drinking cocktails under the stars, fell in love, and lived happily ever after. Well, not quite, because if they had, this week's episode would be a really short one, wouldn't it? The next morning, Lou felt a tug deep down in her stomach as Dan left her room to get a taxi back to the ship. She didn't think she'd ever felt like this about Clive. She left him every few days to fly off somewhere different, and never, she realised then, had she missed him. Well, not like she already missed this man before the door had even closed. And they'd connected. They'd talked into the early hours about everything. She'd told him about Clive, and he'd understood, even praised her for not wanting to break his heart. He'd told her about his recent split from his wife, and how broken he had been to leave his young son. But was it real? Did how she felt, this giddy feeling that she hadn't felt before, was it just a reaction to what she had just done? Was it guilt for cheating, masked as something kinder just to make her feel better about herself? Or was this the man she hadn't realised she was waiting for? She threw herself face down onto her bed, sinking her face into the pillow, catching a scent of him where he had just been laying. Whatever it was that was making her feel like this, she kind of liked it. And whether that was wrong or not, that was just how it was. She reached for the phone next to her bed and phoned Tracy's room, but her friend didn't pick up, so she left her a message. "Hope you had a good night. Tom," she called him by his unwitting nickname to avoid any confusion, "has invited us to the ship today. Meet me in the lobby at 10. "Hello?" Tracy's groggy voice cut in just as she was about to hang up. "Say all that again." In her room, a very hungover Tracy rubbed her face as she tried to keep up with her friend's excited chatter. She looked at the clock, confirming that it was far too early at 8 a.m. to be making decisions, and since a whole construction team was seemingly working away in her head, there was no way on earth that she'd be making a 10 a.m. outing to visit a ship, Royal Navy or not. "Oh, Lou, I'm so sorry, but I can't do that. I'm far too hungover and I need to get back to sleep. But you go, okay? And just have a nice time." "Oh, okay." Lou couldn't hide the disappointment in her voice as her bubble deflated. There was no way she could go to the ship on her own. Even if she drank the rest of that bottle of fizz on the side first. Her stomach lurched as she imagined that, and she suddenly realised that she was hungover too. She hung up the call and got up, pulling her curtains closed and climbing back into bed. The scent of Tom still made her smile a little, but the giddy feeling had left, replaced with a headache and a side order of nausea. Oh, perhaps this was just how it was meant to be, she thought reflectively. Perhaps it was only ever have meant to have been that. Later that afternoon, stretched out on the sun lounges with Bloody Marys in hand, the girls debriefed the night before. "I think you should see him again," Tracy said. They'd been friends since training 2 years earlier, and Tracy had met Clive. But she was far more of a free spirit than Lou had ever been, and she'd never hidden the fact that she thought Lou was settling, selling herself short at 25 when she should be chasing excitement, living in the fast lane, not quietly choosing one man, one house, and one town for the rest of her life. "Look, you know I like Clive," Tracy continued, hesitating just long enough to soften the blow. "But I think he holds you back. Maybe Tom is your person, and maybe he isn't. But the fact that you cheated on Clive for him, surely that tells you something. Lou nodded, drawing a deep mouthful of her drink through the straw. None of this was news. The hard part wasn't knowing what she needed to do. It was deciding when. "I will end things," she said quietly, gazing out to the sea. I just need to support him a little longer." Tracy rolled onto her side to face her. "Then maybe you should get a message to Tom and see if he wants to meet us for drinks tonight." She flicked her sunglasses up and nodded towards 2 of the officers from the night before, now casually chatting with a couple of the crew. "Looks like you weren't the only one who pulled a sailor." That familiar flutter returned to Lou's stomach. "Can you do it for me?" she asked. The idea of approaching them herself suddenly felt far too exposing. Tracy stood, adjusting her bikini. "Consider it done," she said, making her way confidently across the sand towards them. Tom didn't come. As the evening wore on and a slow trickle of sailors arrived to join the crew for drinks, Lou felt the disappointment settle in. She'd been so sure he would come. He'd seemed to really like her the night before, but clearly she'd read him wrong. What did she know about men anyway? Maybe solid and dependable was the sensible choice. Maybe excitement and passion were overrated. Best left to the movies and other people. "Penny for them?" One of the sailors dropped into the empty seat beside her. Lou shook herself out of her thoughts and smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Oh, nothing," she said. "I was a million miles away." "I could tell," he grinned. She hesitated, told herself not to ask, and then asked anyway. Her mouth was always a step ahead of her brain. "So, what happened to Tom? I mean, Dan. I thought he was coming tonight." "Oh, he and a few of the others went to another bar." "Oh." The sailor studied her face, reading the disappointment she hadn't quite managed to hide. "Were you expecting him?" "We got on really well last night," she said carefully. "I just thought he might come." "Oh, it was you." His eyebrows lifted slightly, as though he knew something he wasn't quite sure how to phrase. "Did he say something?" He looked down at his beer. "He just said he'd met a girl and had a good night, if you know what I mean." It wasn't so much what he said as how he said it that made the hairs on the back of Lou's neck prickle. Her face grew warm, a mix of embarrassment and something sharper. Look, don't you worry about him," the sailor added quickly. "He's a bit of a loser. And you're far too good for him." He offered a hand. "I'm Jim. Pleased to meet you." "Louise," she replied, using her full name, just in case. Jim was nice. He was handsome and funny, and she did find him attractive. But he didn't stir the same feeling Dan had. Maybe because he'd arrived when she'd already felt bruised. Maybe he never stood a chance. The drinks went down more slowly that night. By 10 o'clock, Lou excused herself, suddenly craving sleep and a fresh start in the morning. "Stay down with me," Jim said, looking up at her with exaggerated puppy dog eyes. Lou laughed softly and shook her head as she walked away. Whatever he'd thought that look might do, it hadn't worked. No, one sailor was enough for her. If this was how they all behaved, she wasn't risking another. And besides, imagine having a reputation on a Navy ship as someone who slept around with them all. Oh, the shame that would bring. She showered quickly and got into her pyjamas, climbing into the other bed, the one she hadn't slept in with Dan. She was just on the cusp of sleep when she heard the knock at the door, and expecting a drunken Tracy, she sighed as she padded across the tiled floor to open it. But it wasn't Tracy. No, it was Jim. And Jim still had that look on his face that hadn't worked before and wasn't going to now. "I can't get back to the ship," he said. "I was wondering if I could hang out with you until I can get a taxi." Lou never found out how he had come by her room number, but, kind-hearted to a fault, seeing him stranded sat uneasily with her, and she let him in. And, when his attempts to secure transport failed over and over in front of her, she eventually agreed that he could stay in the spare bed. There was no romance, no flirting, no suggestion of anything else. It was a simple offering of comfort and safety that she was sure would be taken as such. In the morning, when she awoke, he was gone. And that, as far as she was concerned, was the end of her sailor story. Until the same evening, that was. It was their last night on the island, and the crew had settled on drinks in the harbour. A couple had splintered off to meet the guys they had formed bonds with, but Lou was relieved that amongst their group there had been no mention so far of anything or anyone from the UK military. The bar was dimly lit. The cocktails were strong, and the music was loud. With all of her senses pleasantly overloaded, she didn't notice the two guys walk in, one with a strong resemblance to Tom Cruise, and one who was just as familiar, but this time sporting a green shirt. She may have not seen them at all had Tracy not dug her in the ribs and pointed. "Oh," said Lou, her mood suddenly dipping. "Can we go somewhere else?" She didn't want to be here. Didn't want to be reminded of how easily he'd used her, how he'd helped her cheat on her boyfriend, and then, apparently, had the audacity to talk about it to his mates. She didn't want to be in the same bar as him, full stop. They moved on soon after, but it seemed wherever they went, Dan and his friend went too. More than once she caught his eye across a crowded room, and then, after just enough alcohol to stop her checking his whereabouts every few seconds, she found herself standing right next to him at the bar. "Nice of you to turn up at the ship." She heard the words without immediately realising they were meant for her. "You could have let me know." Something in his voice snagged her attention. She turned, her heart thudding as she realised he was right there, looking faintly irritated. "Excuse me?" she shot back. "I sent you a message and you never came for a drink, so don't take that tone with me." She winced. She sounded exactly like her mother. Yeah. Couldn't be asked, apparently. That was the message I got." He rolled his eyes, avoiding her gaze, though the smallest smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "That was not what I said," Lou shot back, sharper than she'd intended to. Dan shrugged. "Heard you had a nice night with Jim, though." For a moment, Lou was speechless, trying to work out what the hell was going on, what story he might have heard. And then she understood. Someone had been telling lies, and she had missed a precious night with this man because of them. She looked him square in the eye and steadied her voice. "Nothing happened between me and Jim. I swear." For a moment, the two of them just stood in silence, both looking deep into each other's eyes, both trying to read the other. But something told them both that the other was telling the truth. And Lou wasn't the only one who was feeling that strange, tingling feeling in her stomach right now. Dan was feeling it too. Barbados, 11:59 p.m., 31st of January, 1999. The taxi ride had been hair-raising. Dan had offered the driver double his fare if he could get them to the waterfall by midnight, and he'd been clearly determined to get the extra cash. He'd taken bends at breakneck speed, hadn't stopped at lights, nearly come off the road more than once. Lou hadn't known that there was a rush, So she'd taken her time in the bathroom after dinner, reapplying her makeup, sorting her hair out that had gone kind of wild in the humidity, and coming out to find Dan pacing up and down outside like they were going to miss something. Now, though, as he dropped to one knee and held out the small box, she understood. It had been a whirlwind year. She had eventually left Clive, and Dan had cut as many strings as he could from his ex-wife. She had found passion and excitement like she had never known before, along with the bizarre world of the Royal Navy. With her partner away for months on end, always missing him, always pleased to see him. They'd learned everything about each other, and she'd learned that just sometimes her darling Dan had an incredibly poor choice of words. Like now, as the clock struck midnight and he opened the small box to reveal the sparkling ring inside. "Would you do me the honour?" he said. And Lou put her hand to her chest, feeling her heart thumping hard against it. She smiled down at him, ready. "Do me the honour of being my second wife." And there it was. In the most romantic setting, as a new century began, came what was possibly one of the worst proposals ever. Lou looked up at the stars in the sky and took a moment before replying. On his knee, Dan gave a small chuckle at his joke, and then, as she said nothing, began to realise that perhaps it hadn't landed too well. Unsure how to make it better, he said a silent prayer and waited. His knee began to hurt on the hard ground. Eventually, Lou took a deep breath and looked down at her fast-talking, slow-thinking man. The man who she adored, despite his sometimes unfortunate choice of words. "Yes," she said with a sigh, "I will do you the honour of being your wife." There was no need to repeat the second bit. Well, that was it, folks. The story of how two paths crossed and love was found. We are pleased to confirm that Lou and Dan are still together to this day. And they kept the Caribbean theme alive by getting married in Barbados a couple of years later. Apparently, Dan still sometimes speaks before he thinks, according to Lou anyway. But hey, none of us are perfect, are we? So, from all of us here at The Red Eye, we wish you lots of love this coming Valentine's Day. Whether it's for a partner, a pet, or something else entirely. Dig deep and keep the tradition going, because before you know it, it'll all be over and we'll all be buying Easter eggs. And then buckets and spades. And then giant skeletons. And then fireworks. Oh God, and then it's Christmas, isn't it? The Red Eye podcast is written by Kaylee Kay, narrated and produced by me, Ali Murphy. These stories are based on true events, but certain details, characters, and timelines have been altered to protect the innocent. Visit our website, theredeyepod.com, to subscribe to our newsletter and to find out details on how you can contribute your story for us to turn into an episode. If you enjoyed listening to our stories, please like, subscribe, and review. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Red Eye podcast. You guys are why we do this. We love the stories that you have, and we love telling you the stories that people share with us. To help us reach more people and get the podcast really out there, we would really appreciate it if you left a review. It just helps our podcast be a little bit more visible. Thank you.